All right, today we're talking about the new film Omniscient Reader, The Prophecy. Now, you may be asking, what is Omniscient Reader, The Prophecy? If you're a hardcore fan of the source material, you're probably saying, I'll tell you what it is. It's complete horseshit. But if you're asking someone like myself, who literally just heard of this IP when I saw the trailer and then walked into the theater ass naked to see it, well, I'd say it's kinda pretty good. But if you still aren't sure, let's discuss it over 5 categories right now. Omniscient Reader, The Prophecy is directed by Kim Byung-woo, and it's adapted from the very popular web novel and webtoon named Omniscient Reader Viewpoint. It follows a character named Dokja, who was an average office worker whose sole interest was reading his favorite web novel, 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. But when the novel suddenly becomes reality, he is the only person who knows how the world will end. Armed with this realization, Dokja uses his understanding to change the course of the story and the world as he knows it. That was the summary from IMDb. So as I said before, I walked into this film without any knowledge of the source material whatsoever. Once I saw the trailer, the most I did was search what is Omniscient Reader, and I learned that the film is based on prior works and has a massive hardcore following internationally. So this review is coming from someone who truly has no bias and walked into the theater and watched this completely naked.
Butterball naked.
Well, metaphorically naked. And with that being the case, I'm gonna approach this review as someone who is just critiquing the specific film and not really the IP as a whole. So if you're a true believer of the Omniscient Reader mythology, then I apologize in advance. As far as vision, to me, I felt like Kim Byung-woo did a good job in creating a film that is thrilling and accessible for those of us who are noobs to this world and need a gentle introduction before the lore gets way deeper in following films, because you know there's gonna be following films. After seeing the film, of course, I did some digging, and from what I can tell, it really seems like Byung-woo is trying to balance pleasing the true believers of the novel and attracting newcomers who, like myself, only saw the trailer and thought, this looks kind of dope. Obviously, I can't speak to how accurate it is compared to the novel, but I thought the film was executed well for the most part. On a technical level, I thought the direction was pretty good. I didn't have any problems with the shots or blocking or color choices. In fact, all of those things were top notch in my opinion. The visual storytelling and performances were decent too, although we'll get more into that shortly. Honestly, the only problem I had with the direction was in relation to the pacing and tone. Like I said, this film has a ton of IP, so trying to boil all of that down into a film that's just under 2 hours, I'm sure is pretty difficult. But still, it moves very fast, and there are times where it seems like we should be caring more for a character or a situation, but before we can, it's time for action. And that clearly affects the tone. But like I said, we'll get into that soon. 3 out of 5 for direction and vision. So the cinematography in this was good. I don't really have any complaints or high praise for it. It felt like a professionally made sci-fi action movie. So yeah, the cinematography on a technical level was good. Now, visually is a whole nother story. In general, the visuals were awesome. And I don't mean awesome like, wow, they made that look so real and lifelike. No. As a matter of fact, most of the CG looked pretty fake and even cartoonish at times. I think I even laughed when one of the monsters showed up on screen, but it was one of those laughs because the thought is, this part looks ridiculous, but it's also kind of creative and really fun. And since I've already suspended my disbelief to get into this plot, I'm finding myself enjoying it. I don't know if you guys have seen RRR, but it reminds me of some of the scenes with the tiger chasing Beam at the beginning and the animal melee that happened mid-film. All of those animals were hella fake, and you may have laughed, like, that tiger is clearly fake. But it didn't stop that scene from being one of the best in the film, right? Also, the use of color was done well in my opinion. Quick, one scene spoiler alert. So there's a scene where Dokcha gets swallowed by the Ichthyosaur. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's a sea monster. Anyway, he gets swallowed, and to my surprise and extreme delight, we get a full scene inside the monster's belly where Dokcha is talking to the Dokabi. Hope I'm saying that right. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. He's talking to the Dokabi, and we get some action and exposition that show us how the Omniscient Reader world works. This might have been my favorite scene in the whole film. It was super creative and completely unexpected. I loved the use of color in the monster's belly, and they used some practical effects for the belly too, which was super cool. It felt very fantastical and imaginative. I loved it. Oh, and the action and fight scenes were dope too. I'm not gonna spoil what happens, but there's a boss fight scene at one of the scenarios that was fun to watch. I'ma give cinematography and visuals, I gotta give it a 4 out of 5. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time here because, again, this is based on a novel that I haven't read. And I know the story goes much deeper in the novel. And if there are any hardcore fans watching, I don't want you coming down my road because I have the story wrong. As far as the writing, it was fine. Kind of corny, but the theater I watched it in had the original language being spoken with English subtitles on screen. So I'm sure some of the nuance and even actual whole words are being lost in translation. Plus it's sort of written and delivered like an anime. So if you're familiar with anime writing and delivery, then you know what I mean. But it was adequate. I will talk a little about the storytelling though. As I said earlier, Omniscient Reader follows Dokcha, who was reading his favorite web novel, 3 Ways to Survive the Apocalypse, and the novel suddenly becomes reality, and he uses his understanding of the book to change the course of the story and the world. So that premise is really cool, but as far as the world and how it operates, if I'm being real, it kind of feels like a hodgepodge of other films or stories we've seen or heard. In my opinion, it reminded me of The Matrix meets Jumanji, the new iteration, meets Hunger Games, meets Squid Games, meets video games. Also, the scenes where we're supposed to learn about the character and care just fell kind of flat because they felt like they were just tossed in. The focus in the film was clearly the visuals and star power. Writing and storytelling gets a 2 out of 5. All right, now I'm gonna try to be brief in this section because I know it could raise the ire of some Omniscient Reader zealots. Like I said earlier, I did some digging after watching this, and apparently the casting to this film received a ton of backlash, even though it has some of the biggest stars in the K-pop, K-drama, K-entertainment world. Personally, I thought the performances were great, particularly from An Hyo-seop, Lee Min-ho, Nana, Jung Sung-il, and the most adorable character in the film, Kwon Young-sung. I hope I said all that right. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Apologies to the actors if I got that wrong, I'm trying. Chae-soo Bin was good too, and I didn't hate Jisoo from Blackpink, although she probably had the weakest performance of the bunch, but not terrible in my opinion. I do know Jisoo's casting caught a lot of flack because her character carries a sword in the novel, but in the film, Jisoo uses a gigantic sniper rifle, which was still cool. But if you're a hardcore fan, I can understand the disappointment. You're probably thinking, why not just cast an actor that can use a sword? But they're not Jisoo, that's why. An Hyo-seop and Lee Min-ho caught flack too because fans say they aren't rugged enough to be the characters as described in the novel or drawn in the webtoon. But I've seen some of the drawings, and as someone who's been watching anime since before it got as popular as it is now, I thought the casting was perfect actually. They looked exactly how I would picture an anime character to look in real life, especially Dokcha. An Hyo-seop was a great lead, in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed his performance. But I get it. I'm a huge fan of Cowboy Bebop, and I was definitely disappointed with the Netflix live action remake. In particular, Radical Edward.
Thanks, Vigo!
Yeah. 4 of 5 for performances and character. So that brings us to overall execution and impact. In short, I thought it was executed very well, at least for someone who is just being introduced to the world. I'll probably even try to get into the webtoon if I can find the episodes. As far as impact, that remains to be seen, doesn't it? So far, the reviews have not been kind, but it was released almost 3 weeks ago internationally, so a lot of the hardcore fans got to see it first and made sure to chime in negatively on IMDb, which when I first checked, the rating was at around 4.3 out of 10 with thousands of votes and reviews. But upon the making of this video, the rating has risen to a lean 4.7 out of 10. So maybe a few noobs wandered in and enjoyed it like I did. And the way it ends clearly sets up the next film. So I'm curious to see what happens to the franchise going forward. 3 out of 5 for execution and impact. All in all, Omniscient Reader comes out to a total score of 16, which gets it just over the hump and into my crowd pleaser category. Don't forget to check out my movie phone videos and get a fun, different take on movie reviews, new and old. I'll put a link in the description. Did you see Omniscient Reader: The Prophecy? Are you refusing to see it because it'll never live up to the novel? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to see more of my Earnest and movie phone reviews, please subscribe for much more. Thank you for watching. Later.